Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to the League Two podcast. You can get subscribed to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify. It's the business end of the season, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So I'm delighted to be joined by Ed Walker, an expert on all things fourth tier. Ed, thanks so much for making the time for us this evening. Just wondering, in terms of League Two, there's obviously plenty to play for in all three aspects of the table, but that promotion race looks really fascinating because even Walsall, who are top of the league at the moment, they've actually not lost so many games recently, but they've certainly been dropping points. Bradford City, of course, 1 win in 5. It feels like everyone's dropping points at the moment, doesn't it?
It's funny, isn't it? We've used the quote this year, haven't we? Does anyone actually want to go up? Because it kind of feels like they're all just falling over each other. I mean, Walsall, I think, have won 2 in the last 15 and are still top, which I think is, it says, first of all, how big the lead was at the start. Go back to sort of January time when they were flying, and I think they were 12 clear. But also that the teams below them aren't consistent enough to actually get past them. I mean, Bradford have had several opportunities now, not managed to take them. Now Port Vale are in that mix. Doncaster could still points-wise with their game in hand, so... Maybe they'll get their act together and finally overtake them and take the top spot.
Yeah.
It felt like Walsall there for taking for a while. So we'll see with that. That was super impressive from Vale last night. Really liked the second goal, particularly. Really nice crafted move. Although to Liza, it wasn't too bad either. Bit of a sting to Bradford the last couple of results. I think they had 0-0 Accrington as well, where they took high numbers. But back at home to them for the weekend and beyond from there. I still have no idea who's going up, Gab. I still don't. I've been saying this for months now. It's so open in there. And we're seeing Notts County playing tonight. They can go up to fourth with their game in hand. Doncaster in the mix. Wimbledon still can be in the mix. That was a really frustrating defeat to Swindon last night. And I'd maybe say, is it too bold to say 6 and up? Is that maybe being disrespectful to perhaps Grimsby or Crewe?
No, I don't think so. I think, I saw Grimsby last night. They're missing Danny Rose at the moment through concussion. I think that made
a weird game, that one, though, wasn't it? A lot of strange incidents in it.
Oh, my God. Yeah, Ed, there was a really weird incident last night because I was there and there was a very strange situation where the ref gave an indirect free kick to Crewe Alexandra when it was the alleged foul was supposedly a tackle, like a bad challenge. It's either inside the penalty area or it isn't. It's not an indirect free kick. So goodness knows what was going through the referee. And I think the ref was bad for both teams actually because there was a number of very strange incidents. So I'm not sure he really got a handle on it. So personally, I don't think anyone outside the current top 6 is going to finish in the top 3. I think that's a reasonable assertion to make. I have to say, I've been Vale skeptical all season. I've sort of, I've always sort of maintained that they're going to finish in the playoffs because they're individual quality, but aren't quite cohesive enough to get in the top 3. But based on their performance last night, possibly one of the best in the season. The fact they've won 4 of their last 5, Reece Walters playing so well. I'm kind of wondering, do Vale break in there?
Well, they're in the best nick at the minute. There's ones in the pack, you say. I feel like everyone's kind of having a turn to be in the best nick. So does Vale's best nick now last for this final month of the season? It's certainly easy to look at them at the moment and say there's confidence there. I think I've always found a bit of an issue trying to work out if Darren Moore likes a settled team or not. He feels like there's such a tendency to chop and change, particularly I think in midfield and forward areas. But he looks settled. I'm crossing my fingers when I say this. He looks settled with his 11 now.
Yeah.
I think he likes his back 3. I think he knows his midfield setup. We know what Ben Garrity others. We know what Kurzlotters. As you say, Reece Walters is a lovely fit. I really like Tolai. I think he's had an excellent step up coming up from Aldershot in the league below. And we know what Stockley can offer as a brute force up top. It works really nicely. And I particularly think Vale Park is a place where they're a real handful at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe Port Vale are finding a crucial formula at a late stage. Again, Bradford City, though, didn't one win. Weirdly, the one win that they had was arguably one of their best performances of the season against Colchester.
I was at that game and they were really good.
Yeah, so this is very odd, isn't it? Like they absolutely annihilated Colchester, but then is it 1 in 6 now or 1 in 5? Certainly
1 in 5. The last one.
So I'm confused by Bradford. wondering whether they're going to get their attacking midfielders back fit, because they made the bench again. They came off the bench against Colchester, I think, Bobby Poynton and was it Patterson?
Yes. Although I
So
see Patterson a bit more of as a starts in midfield alongside Smallwood and then makes the runs
Yeah.
from there. I don't think he's one of the two natural tens. Poynton's an interesting one because we discussed him before for his potential, but it still feels like, I think I said this last time we talked, it feels like he's lower down the pecking order a bit than someone like Tyreek Wright or George Lapsey at the moment. And I'm not sure that's
Tyreek Wright started against Colchester.
he was very, very good.
Felt like it came out of nowhere though, that start, and then all of a sudden he put in this brilliant performance, and then he's the one to start alongside Kavanagh. So
yeah, that was his best game, Tyreek Wright. I think we've seen him quite a lot utilised as more of a wing back recently. I think voice is going. Sorry, I think I'm using him, seeing him utilised more as like a wing back, as I recall at Argyle, and certainly a bit of time at Bradford. And he's in my head, he's always kind of been a bit more of a wide forward. The kind of guy you're playing like that kind of, if you're 4-2-3-1, you're having like sort of the wide positions behind a striker, for instance. So putting him in that front through is more letting him back to his level where he has that main attacking impetus. And with that overlap he's got of Taye Adaramola around him, and then it's sometimes even Ramoni Critchlow pushes up from left centre back. That worked really well on the night, and he was the fast direct threat. And weirdly, it was his two frontline partners who got the goals in that Colchester win, but he was probably the standout of the three.
I think in terms of missing players, obviously Bradford missing some of their midfielders. I think Doncaster missing their defenders at the moment, because that was a big thing for them in that 2-2 draw with Walsall, where they're without Jay McGrath and Joseph Olowu. And
Jez Maxwell, left back too.
Yeah, and to be fair to Richard Wood and Tom Anderson, these are two experienced defenders. So it's not like they're having to play the kids or anything, but it does seem like they're missing that dominance that McGrath and Olowu have provided all season.
They've just established themselves as the regulars. I think, I don't know, if we were at the start of the season, would we have said Wood and Anderson was the main pair? I don't know where we felt with Olowu at that point, whether we felt it was... Although I feel like there was a bit of flexibility. We weren't sure if McGrath was going to go with a 3 or a 4 back there, because he did switch it around.
Do you mean right at the start of the season, Ed?
What's your stat, sorry?
Well, do you mean right at the start of the season?
Yeah, maybe. I feel like I went into that. I thought Wood was the guy. I mean, he's had a lot of injury problems, which has affected his game time this year. But someone of that senior figure, Richard Wood, I remember when he came in, that was a big deal just because of the senior figure that he provides, and the fact he's played at a much higher level for a large part of his career. You were looking at him, I suppose, a little bit like Billy Sharp as one of the key figures in this team to really stand out with his experience. But perhaps the case to both of them, they kind of find themselves not so much those key integral men anymore compared to others.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's funny how quickly it shifted, because last season Richard Wood was like this integral player who, when he was fit, he made a massive difference. And Jay McGrath, going into the season, I did a summer deep dive with Daniel Pearson, 18 Dapper, and I don't know if we even mentioned Jay McGrath, and it shows how quickly it can swing with older players that are maybe getting on a bit and young players that are sort of bursting through. And this was really Jay McGrath's breakthrough season. So he's had a great season. I think we've seen how good he's been when he's played for Doncaster, but we've also, in a way, seen how influential he is when he hasn't played, and how much.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing with Doncaster is, front line wise, I think there's two for me. Luke Molyneux is a definite match winner. There is definitely a guy there who can change the game on his head. I do really like Rob Street.
Yeah.
Just that direct pace. I kind of had this idea in my head. I think he might come in January, which is part of the reason he's not been on the profile too much compared to he came as a January signing. So you were looking at the start of the year saying Sharp, Ironside, you basically rotate the two as your main forward, but Street just gives you that bigger dynamism. Dynamism? That's not the word. Dynamism. That's the word I'm looking for. Dynamism in there. And Jordan Gibson, I think I'm starting to see coming to his own a little bit more, which is nice, because it's been a little while since I've seen Gibson really start. I'm thinking back to when he was in Paul Simpson's Carlisle was the last point. I really, really liked him. And I've always recognised him as someone with a lot of versatility as a kind of wide midfielder or a central midfielder across that midfield line. Seems to have that spot of left wing nailed down at the minute in this team, and it's Clifton or Sabara who plays at 10 alongside him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant to go too much on that 3-0 victory over Carlisle, because Carlisle are atrocious, and don't worry, we'll get to them in the moment. But I also did like some of those passages of play that created those goals for Doncaster, and it reminds me a little bit of some of their football they played in Grant McCann's first stint in charge. So that's what I'm quite excited about when it comes to Doncaster. But yeah, I mean, Notts County as well, Ed. I mean, they're not banging form at the moment, but I mean, do you think they're going to finish their playoffs?
The thing we always talk about with Notts is the individuals. And not all those have been around. I mean, Alessandro Jatta, fantastic. David McGoldrick, still so silky. Stuart Maynard, every single interview will say something praising about him, just the way that he controls the ball and just so elegant with his play. They've been missing Joey Jones for a period of time. They're currently without Alex Bass, their main goalkeeper. I mean, Slocum's coming quite well as a understudy to him, but they've done okay there.
They found that US lad, haven't they?
Yeah, they brought in a lad, Tyler Miller, who was kind of a backup last couple of years in MLS. So I think he's just making up the numbers more than anything else to them alongside Slocum at the moment. So they don't have to play the young lad, Milai Pero, instead of him, so they can have him on the bench. I think if we had all these individuals around, I mean, Joey Jones is reigning player of the season still. We know the quality he can possess. Seen him nowhere near as much this year. And the wing back positions, if you've got, I think, Nick Cerula and then him on the wide positions rather than Will Jarvis, might be a difference maker. I've liked Charlie Whitaker. That's probably the big positive to me. I'm really liking him as that growth 10. I think his idea is to basically be what Dan Crowley was. I'm not certain I see the level of ball carrying as much as him, but certainly the ball striking. I'm definitely seeing that in a couple of his recent results. Newport particularly comes to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think with Charlie Whitaker, Gillingham away, it was Gillingham, where he played really well. I liked his agility and the way he drops in and links play. So yeah, I'm excited about Charlie Whitaker. And so if I look at Notts County's best 11, like I look at Alex Bass, I look at Jacob Badeau, I look at Matty Platt. Who's the other ones? Jody Jones when he's fit, but he hasn't been this year. Charlie Whitaker, Dave McGoldrick,
Palmer and Abbott in the middle.
Of course, Palmer and Abbott, yeah. So actually, I mean, that's a pretty good 11. It's just that it's felt very disrupted, hasn't it? Because they've not had their best 11 fit consistently over the course of the season. I think if they had, then they'd probably be in the top 3.
Perhaps.
Perhaps. Yeah, so I've literally no idea. I mean, I think if you'd asked me a week ago, I'd have probably.
It's going to change week on week, Gab. Don't.
Oh, I know. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to hold you to any of these predictions, Ed. Don't worry.
Yeah, but other people do. That's the problem. That's why I don't like doing it.
Yeah. But one thing that I am mindful of is that Bradford's fixtures do look at a potential killer, which is the thing that could give some encouragement to the likes of Doncaster and Notts County and Wimbledon.
Yeah, when you got Holloway, Swindon, that's always a bit sticky one, isn't it? And you got Crewe in there, Notts County in there, Chesterfield, who I think are this season's what if. I think Chesterfield, because they have looks, when they win, they look so good. But they've had a horrendous injury list this year that's forced Paul Cook to chop and change in so many areas. And I think if they probably had a full 11, they'd probably be up in the mix with all these. They remain a bit of a what if to me this season, but still could show some real quality. And then the final day at Fleetwood, who have kicked on a little bit in the last couple of weeks, got themselves a number of goals, particularly in the last 2 matches. So, yeah, that's a pretty brutal looking run into them. It's going to be promotion deserved if they get through it.
But then if they only need another, let's say they only need another 10 points, if they can win at Swindon and beat Fleetwood on the final day, then they only need 4 points from the other 4 games, especially if they can say draw with some of the other promotions.
Yeah, and there is a factor that it feels like the confidence is there at Valley Parade now, whereas previously with Bradford, you've always felt like they don't make the most of the occasion and the big crowds when they're playing a VP. But I think we're expecting another 20,000 plus this weekend for Crewe. Probably make the most of it and aim to put in something like they did at Colchester again.
Wimbledon, are we looking at playoffs for them rather than autos?
Yeah, a bit of a shame for them, I think. Yeah, it's sticky, tricky to really pinpoint one thing down to it. That was just a nightmare last night. But Swindon, you really blew an opportunity there. 1-0 up heading into 90. 2 really ridiculous penalties. I mean, John Joe O'Toole losing his head just basically with that handball right at the end to give Shimanga the chance. And I think Shimanga basically did the same penalty twice, which maybe annoyed Goodman a bit because I think he hit the same corner both times with both spot kicks. A little bit annoying to them. I wonder
the mad thing is they had a similar thing against Barrow where they were 2-0 up in the second half, and it does make you think those extra 5 points, like what they'd have been right in it if they'd been able to hold on for those wins. So very frustrating, I think, for AFC Wimbledon. So in terms of the playoff scramble, I think it was really important in terms of the openness of the competition that Crewe beat Grimsby last night. I think Mickey Demetrio was a bit of a lucky boy to stay on the pitch, but he was imperious at the back otherwise. And again, another rock solid performance from the Alex. Their defence has been a particular strong point this season. And it's now only 1 point, the gap to the top 7 for them. Colchester, of course, drawing against Gillingham. So they're 3 points off. And then Chesterfield have actually, because they won in midweek, they're only 4 points off with a game in hand. So actually, all of a sudden, them and arguably Salford, although I don't really see it, back in with a sniff.
Yeah, Chesterfield's a good one. They won 5 or 6 unbeaten. I think they've taken, 16 points from the last 18 now, even despite the fact that they're basically playing Liam Mandeville at right back. They've got the backup left back in, and Gordon Sparks out for a while. Jamie Grimes and Ash Palmer at the minute. He's playing at the back.
Yeah,
that's not meant to be a starting pair. They wanted to have Che Dunkley and Carl McFadden as that pair, but they've not had the chance this season for that. Had to chop a change. Finally got Will Grigg back on the starting pitch, which is quite nice. Just from the Paul Cook, really, I think he could still make this work with them because there's a really good group there. I particularly just love Armando Dobra. Just think he's been a really great asset this season.
Lovely to watch, hasn't he, Armando Dobra? Yeah, I think Chesterfield have definitely had the potential to do more and become a more established proposition in that top 7. But they've still got there. I mean, their recent form does put them in with a bit of a sniff. Grimsby, Ed, I mean, I think that they're cooking something really nice under David Artell. Obviously missed the focal point in Danny Rose last night, which certainly held them back. But I do like the direction of travel for the Mariners.
Do you think it might be a different story if we had Cameron McJanet in there, in that back 3, rather than, I know Tyrrell Warren's kind of been substituting into there alongside Tarman Rogers, and I felt like McJanet's been kind of one of their standouts, certainly in defence this season. So I'm wondering if you maybe felt would have been maybe a different story with him on that left side, the back 3.
Yeah, it wasn't Tyrrell Warren's best night. Personally, I prefer him at right back rather than on the left of back 3. So I do think that might have been a factor. I also think maybe bringing on Tilly at the base of midfield, the lad they got in from Scandinavia in January, could have made a difference towards the end instead of somebody like Curtis Thompson, who's a side.
And I wanted to ask as well about Svan Thorsen. Does he look like a winger playing wing back?
Yes, possibly. I think he's definitely somebody who you want in those more attacking areas, combining with the likes of Barrington and Luca rather than as a wing back. So I think it's been difficult without those centre forwards, and Dave Artell's had to find other solutions. But the big one for me is not having that focal point, somebody that the ball's going to stick to. But then the other factor is they didn't really get the great service into the likes of Luca and Barrington last night as well, because the likes of Corey and McEachran and Kieran Green to an extent were just a bit of a level below their normal standards. Grimsby still top 7 for you, Ed?
Oh, goodness me. That's like asking a promotion race, Gab.
I know.
I kind of feels a little bit like that was a significant night last night, because they could have just built that gap and almost kind of closed the top 7 off to a certain degree. And now it's brought them back into the mix, Crew coming right behind them. And there's a couple of others, as we say. Colchester have one that have briefly got into there and dropped out recently. Chesterfield, Salford, Fleetwood just on the periphery. It's... I can't see and say for certain. I would like, ideally, to certainly see Rose back, and I'd really like to see Justin Abiku back with all the seasons done. I'm not sure what the timescale is on him, because I think that's your starting striker pair if everyone's around.
I think Rose is likelier than Abiku, because Rose was only out for concussion, which is like a 2-week thing, whereas Abiku, I've heard, might be until the end of the season or something like that. So I don't know about that. But one thing I would say in favour of Grimsby is, on paper, and you have to caveat that, and you talk about the fixtures with on paper, it's not the worst, because Morecambe at home is a tough game for their situation, but then it's Harrogate away, then it's Swindon at home, then it's Port Vale away, then it's MK Dons away, who have been absolutely awful form second half of the season, and then AFC Wimbledon at home, who you never know what their situation might be. They could be sort of cemented in the playoffs by that stage as well. So I would say that's a relatively favourable fixture list for Grimsby, and I feel that they could get something like 10 points from those 6 games. What do you think?
You would imagine 10 gets them in there. Does 10 almost get them in the promotion race with the way everyone's falling over each other at the moment? I don't know.
I mean, I think
projections are tricky, aren't they? It's kind of looking like maybe 80 something for top 3, and then 72 plus. I probably would say we're going to playoffs this season.
I think it'll be so I think it'll be 80 points that gets you into the top 3. Although for teams that have got a lesser goal difference like Port Vale and Doncaster, I think it might be 81, but that's very sort of loose. Whereas I would say the number for top 7 is probably more like 71, 72, something like that.
That does work around normal averages for this league. That's still right to me.
Good. So Colchester then, Ed, they've got a bit of an injury crisis at the moment.
Yep.
A little bit of a worry that those injuries have struck at the worst possible time.
Does feel that way. I almost wonder if they felt a little bit bruised too by that Bradford defeat, because they came into that in lightning form and a long unbeaten run and got a very scrappy, messy equaliser and then just got put out of sight. 4-1 might have slightly flattered the overall feeling of the game because Bradford just got killer, particularly at the end of that second half. But when I look at some of the individuals in there, I've really enjoyed the direct pace of Aurora Edwards this season, particularly. I think Harry Anderson can be equivalent on that right-hand side. I think
Edwards is a bit better than Anderson, personally.
I'd agree with that, yeah. Certainly what I've seen recently. I think Jack Payne's just integral, just the way he sticks everything together. I did not realize he's left-footed. I feel like I've seen that guy take set pieces with his left and then shoot with his right. He just seems to be so comfortable at either foot. It feels like that to me. So he's a really handy.
Jack Payne's got this history of playing in League One for top end sides, and he's always done well at that level. So I'm almost looking at him in League Two that he's better than League Two level. So
certainly the basis of what we have seen,
yeah. And then you got the likes of JJ McDonnell as well. He's had a wonderful loan spell from Nottingham Forest. I hope that for Aurora Edwards, I've got a feeling he's going to be playing in League One next season if he's fit and everything for the summer, because I think that he's just looked so explosive this year, hasn't he?
It's about time because he's been on the radar quite a bit. I think we've had loan spells previously where I think he was at Grimsby, come out of Bristol City, went to Exeter. I think he had an original spell at Colchester where he kind of made a little mark. I think he's got up in Scotland to play with Ross County, and it's this second time at Colchester where he's really starting to show that actually with that consistent game time, with that clear position in the team as a left winger, there is a wonderful turn of pace in him and a really good direct runner. He's a real handle for a right back when he's on it.
I think for clubs in League One, I don't know what his contract situation is actually, whether he's under contract for them. Anyway, not sure, but certainly, I think clubs in middling to sort of lower placed League One clubs next year, I think he could be a really exciting weapon just because of that explosive pace. Don't know what the contract situation is or whether
I think it's up this year.
Oh, it's up this year. Oh, wow. That's a free for all then, isn't it? Right. So, I mean, I would probably make Grimsby the favourites right now in terms of the top 7. But I think it's going to go right to the wire. In terms of that bottom 2, then, one thing I am mindful of, Ed, is Morecambe have got to play Harrogate at home on the final day. And their goal difference is only slightly inferior. So Morecambe, if they can make up 6 points on Harrogate between now and the final day, they've got a chance of catching Harrogate. Alternatively, they've probably got to gain 7 points on Accrington Stanley between now and the end of the season. I think gaining 4 points on Tranmere is possibly a bit of an ask.
It's quite nice, actually, Morecambe's last couple of results, because I kind of feared it was done down there.
Yeah.
Because we'd seen, I mean, when you look at it, the decision to get rid of Adkins and bring in Crosby has worked a treat to Tranmere. They've hit a really nice run of form. That was a really frustrating defeat to Harrogate last night. But before that...
did you see the stats for that one as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was just rockets and just absolute worldies from range from some of the goals were outrageous in that match, particularly from the Harrogate perspective. And that's
do you know what?
that's very
Weirdly,
Harrogate that it's just seemed because Harrogate feel like so often they actually play to a really low level, but they just pluck something out of the air, whether it's a dodgy mistake in the back of the opposition
do you know
or
what it is
themselves
though,
just pulling
Ed?
out a cracker.
Their three best players this season have been their goalkeeper and their two centre halves.
Yep.
It's been James Belcher, it's been Anthony O'Connor, and it's been Jasper Moon.
Yep.
And when you have that rock solid unit, you don't actually have to be that great in other areas. And I think that's how Harrogate have kind of scraped by. And I hate to, I want to be really positive about a club that's dealt with budget cuts this season. It's been a really challenging campaign for them, and they've come through it on the face of things. So I want to give them a lot of credit for that. At the same time, it does feel a little bit like they've got through on that defensive resolve and Belcher, as opposed to necessarily being a particularly great side. And I would probably, there'd be one that I'd be worried about if they lost, say, Belcher or lost.
Especially because one of those three is currently a loanee.
Moon.
Mm.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what
Moon's
the contract situation is at Burton, but we might eye him up. He's had a season he's not been able to have yet. He's had a really good season.
Ed, if you're in League Two next season, you want Jasper Moon, surely.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the contract. It's a little bit game time related, Gab, because his spot in that back line isn't there at the minute just because of the personnel Burton have got.
But is Ryan Sweeney's out of contract, right?
Yeah, but we're on our knees basically trying to beg him back in because he's been given the captaincy and he basically lives in the area. We're all going to basically just crowd around him on holiday and say you're not leaving until you're signed. So we're putting our foot down, stamping authority on that. Especially because the logical thing for Moon would be the right centre back role, but that's Van Kooten's, that's nailed down. And right. I don't really like him as a left side centre back because we've got a left footer there, which we have got with people like Shraha and Armour. So I'm not sure actually coming as good as I think he is. I think actually the best thing for Moon might be to move on.
Yeah, I think Jasper Moon is probably realistically Harrogate are going to be in the bottom end budget wise next season. So therefore, I think Jasper Moon's definitely elevating into, I think he's a top half League Two defender at least. So I think that there's going to be clubs like like a Fleetwood or a Salford that are going to have some interest in him. I think.
Yeah, I still wonder about O'Connor. I think Anthony O'Connor still seems to be somehow underrated just because of the club he's at. I think he really is one of League Two's top centre backs. And I would strongly put an argument thought that Belcher is possibly League Two's best goalkeeper in terms of actual shot stopping. He just seems to regularly pull out these outstanding world class saves.
Yeah,
remarkable, really.
And also, he's a great presence around the club as well, and
absolutely.
I think he represents Harrogate Town extremely well. Where was I? I think Anthony O'Connor. Yeah, Joe, I actually liked him in League One with Morecambe. So I think he's been in these divisions. It seems to me that Anthony O'Connor's been a very reliable defender, but because he's been playing for, do you think sometimes, Ed, players that are defenders say they might be a bit of a low profile kind of role, and B, playing for smaller clubs like Morecambe and Harrogate Town, you kind of get, because when Anthony O'Connor was Bradford City captain, there was a business with the armband at Portsmouth, and so he didn't really maximise it when he was playing for a bigger club, and that might have harmed his profile. But actually, if you look at the last 5 years or so, he's been very reliable for the smaller clubs, and probably deserves a different, a bit deserves something different.
Maybe it's that environment. I mean, it's probably a primarily defensive first environment for Harrogate, just given the situation they're in down the other end of the table. So there's maybe less focus on what you are in possession and just what you are basically as a last man defender.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm a big fan of both of those. So hopefully they can continue to do well in their careers. Morecambe, I think they're going to be a very tough side to face between now and the end of the season, just because they've always been just so competitive. I think it's 14 defeats by a single goal for Morecambe, and a lot of those games they would feel like they could have got something from. So I'm almost certain they're going to beat Carlisle on the 12th. And then I think there's other games where they're going to be able to. I think they, if they've got something to play for against Harrogate, I think they'll beat them. And it's
am I wrongly ignoring all their away fixtures? Is that a wrong thing to do?
No.
I just kind of look at it and thinking it's a Mazuma fixture, particularly because of the recent wins we've seen. They really took advantage of a very dodgy Cheltenham last night. That was a really good win over Swindon. I think Lee Angol's really starting to come into his own for them, which is a really
Yes.
handy timing. And you're looking at Angol and thinking, God, we had that from the start of the year. This is a bit different story.
Yeah, finally they've got a centre forward who can convert chances and make their pressure pay. Because, for 3/4 of the season, it's been all huff and puff and no real end product other than little bits here and there from Graham Edwards. Whereas now they've got Lee Angol, right? And also, I love Lee Angol. I saw him at Port Vale like the other weekend, and first half was really difficult because at that point, Ben Tollett and Graham Edwards were very far back. So he had to do a lot of graft in isolation to make it work. And he got through it really well. So I think he's done, whatever happens for Morecambe, I think Lee Angol has done his reputation as an EFL capable centre forward that's taken a bit of a hit in recent years. I don't think he's done it any harm at all with his work this year. So this could be a great springboard for him.
No, and I'd like if they could get a proper right back in too, because I think they've been playing Adam Lewis said last couple of games, and he's not a right back really. It's a left back.
No, he's left back.
You can get one of Millen or certainly Luke Hendry back. That'd be handy for them too, and just a little bit more forward presence around them. I mean, there was a while I thought Ben Tollett was their guy, was their Angol, that guy who could win them games. Dropped off a bit since now, and it's not like his spot in the team isn't nailed on anymore. You've seen Garner play ahead, certainly Dallas play ahead. Graham Edwards, when he's been fit, has gone there instead. So feels like he's lost that importance, which is a shame because I think start of the year I would have looked at Tollett and said that's the guy out of this large crop of players that could work. Because we did look at them in the summer, knowing that they basically kind of just had to bring a load in after the embargo was lifted. And we looked at a number of them and thought these are guys who kind of you hope more comes on past reputation or the fact that they're stepping up to the National League for maybe the first time in a while. Not a lot of those have hit to the level required, but I felt like Tollett was one of those certainly at the start of the year that was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Carlisle, the big, it's not even for me, the points gap for Carlisle. It's the fact that they went to Chesterfield and they did have Elliot Embleton sent off. But this is a game where they're fighting for their lives and they allowed their opponents to have 38 shots and they had only 4. And I just don't see how, if you're really going for it in a game where everything's on the line, you can only have 4 shots in a game. That just seems astonishing to me.
Just a nightmare. Just a complete and utter nightmare. Yeah, it's a worrying. We seem to be starting a bit of worrying trend in League Two because it looks like for the second year in a row, the side that comes bottom of League One goes down again the following year. We had this with Forest Green last season. We've got a Carlisle this year.
You had Chesterfield doing it a few years ago as well.
Yeah, it really makes you worry to Shrewsbury in particular, given the situation that's just occurred to them up there. But that's next year's story.
Yeah,
I mean, neither Forest Green or Carlisle are in bad financial state. They have got
finances there. That's the thing. Like Forest Green Rovers have.
It's just continuous recruitment errors, I would say. They've just made the wrong choices over the last couple of years. And it's just led to them tail off, really stink out the place in League One and come down, and that losing feeling just continues for them.
But what I would say is that depending on whether Forest Green Rovers are still in the National League next season, I actually would expect Carlisle United to potentially dominate the National League next year.
Yes.
Because I think their level of financial, I think you can have, like your recruitment.
I agree. This is, you remember Scunthorpe a couple of years ago had this decline. We knew that decline was going to carry on because it's such a state of a club at that point. They were going to potentially fall further. It does feel like Carlisle should be able to get their act together, especially because National League gives you a much larger transfer window. As we know, you don't have that strict confines that the EFL does. You got a lot more free agents, for instance, and as you say,
you're less confined as well financially.
Yeah, exactly. It's there's a bottleneck in the division, of course, where you've got to win the league to guarantee up on those horrific playoffs. But we've seen the juggernauts of that league kind of come out recently. Stockport now out, Chesterfield now out, Wrexham now out. They could be the financial juggernaut of the league next year, potentially.
Yeah, I think so. And I actually think League Two could be set to get a little bit weaker, dare I say, because I don't think that any of the clubs coming into the league are necessarily going to massively strengthen it for financially. Like if it's,
yes, I am very excited to see this Barnet team, which is absolutely ripping the league up under Dean Brennan. I'm very keen to see that.
Yeah,
and then I'd agree. We're not seeing. We've had that period where Stockport and Wrexham have come in and come through. I still think
And it's small
Chesterfield, if they
clubs
hadn't
coming
had
down as well, Ed.
what's that? Sorry.
It's small clubs coming down as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Unless it's Bristol Ravens, but
I mean, I would say the burden will be, if they do end up in League Two next year, will not be the usual burden. There will be a bit more financial power to them,
agreed.
the same, and
Yeah.
they'll have the ambition certainly of coming back up. But yeah, I see your point. Certainly with Cambridge, with God, who else is at the bottom? Thor now. Shrewsbury and Crawley are going to fascinate me next year because Lindsay, who knows what they're going to do? They're probably going to win every game 5-4, just with the chaos that they seem to have in there, and fact to Wagby themselves. It might. I think it could be a bit like this year again, where we just have quite a open, chaotic race at the top. Maybe not a team that properly stamps their authority and just goes a lot clear, but maybe we don't have the high-profile names compared to previous years. But that shouldn't take away, I think, from the entertainment of it. And I like to think that whoever comes up out of National League can certainly at least continue that trend of not going straight back down and take themselves at least into the middle of the table. Because you look at someone like Bromley, for instance, who have had a really solid debut season.
Yeah,
currently got the Golden Boot leader, Michael Cheek. I'll be intrigued to see if someone goes for him. It'd be a bit weird for that because he's that's very much his area. So can you get some value in a guy who's mid-30s now, but clearly can still be a source of goals at this level? Does someone take a punt on him?
I tell you what, Ed, if I was in Michael Cheek's shoes, I wouldn't go to League One. I would try and carve out a niche as a League Two specialist because I think stepping up to League One at 33 is a bit of an ask when you've had your whole career in non-league. Whereas I think you could make a lot of money as a League Two specialist where, you can say, every season I'm in League Two, I score X amount of goals, and I think that could work quite nicely for him. So,
but wouldn't it be very League One for, say, one of these promoted sides, whoever they are, to say, yeah, go on, we'll have you, Golden Boot winner, come play for us, and we'll try you. It's League One clubs, especially the promoted ones, do try and get people from that division below.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. Right. Well, Ed, it's been great to chat about League Two. I always look forward to these. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks everyone for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate League Two podcast. You could do us a massive favour if you've enjoyed this episode by getting subscribed to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify. And I'll see you again for another League Two podcast next week.